In order to have great success, you have to be willing to take big risks. It's easy to be comfortable. If you're too comfortable, you're not challenging yourself. The greatest leaders in the world are constantly putting themselves out there. They're constantly just inches away from being on the ledge. And when they are, and in that constant challenging position, on the treadmill with the steep incline, will they fall down? Absolutely. Will they make mistakes? 100%. I've made plenty of mistakes. But if you don't put yourself out there and you're not willing to take some risk, you're not going to know what your full arsenal of skill sets are. You're not really going to know what you're really good at. Because if you do the thing that's comfortable and it becomes comfortable year after year after year, how do you truly know what your potential is? If you think about the greatest risk takers, they're not thinking about the ladder. They're not thinking about that next place. They're thinking about rock climbing. They're thinking about going here, testing this. Think about Richard Branson. Everything he does is rock climbing. He always is solving for something that's completely out of his comfort zone. Has he made a ton of mistakes? He'll sit here and give you a list of the mistakes. But he's never afraid to go after the next risk. I believe if you want to be a great leader, if you want to be successful and love what you do, step out of your comfort zone and be willing to take a little bit of risk each day that leads up to something that you never thought possible. One of my most memorable risks was when I had just had my first son. I was 5 days out of the hospital with him, hormonal to say the least, and I got an opportunity to go run a major financial institutions business for the New York Stock Exchange. It was a huge gig, a huge opportunity, working with thousands of the biggest and brightest minds in the financial community, of which probably 98% were men. I knew immediately that the job that they were offering me, the opportunity to go run this business for Morgan Stanley, meant that I was going to replace a man who had been in that position for decades. He was probably the most revered man on the New York Stock Exchange floor and had an incredible resume. I hadn't worked on the floor. I didn't have the pedigree. I was 30 years old, and I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. In some respects, all the people who told me, you can't do it, you won't be able to handle it, the risk, the amount of money, the sheer pressure of trading hundreds of billions of dollars daily, and then managing a staff predominantly of men, and then working in an industry filled with men who've had dozens of years of experience. I can remember that first day going down to the New York Stock Exchange floor. Maybe my baby was 4 to 6 weeks old. It was well before maternity leave. I knew I had to begin to immerse myself and get to know all the guys on the team. And I had to think about so many different factors. I was taking a huge risk because I was totally out of my comfort zone. I didn't know all the players. I knew some of the players. I knew they weren't going to trust me. I knew they didn't think I had the pedigree. I knew they thought I didn't have the maturity. And never before had a woman run a bulge bracket business of this size and magnitude in the history of the New York Stock Exchange business. The entire deck was stacked against me. Nothing about stepping into that job was easy. It was absolutely the most difficult thing I ever did. And I knew right away that the most important thing I'd have to do is prove myself. I couldn't walk in there on day one and say, these are all the things that I'm going to change overnight, because in order to really gain their respect, I had to listen, I had to learn, I had to observe, and most importantly, I had to get licensed to do the same kind of business that they did on the floor so that I could justify that I deserved to be amongst them, with them, and then eventually to lead them.